Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Member of Parliament Chad Collins, dignitaries, distinguished guests, our Honourable Mayor of Hamilton, our heads of organizations in the Ukrainian community, and other dear community members. We will observe a moment of silence, followed by the singing of our national anthems. Would everybody please stand? And now the singing of the Canadian anthem. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. And now the Ukrainian anthem. Ще не вмерла українці ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття молоді, усміхнеться доля. Гинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. То, що тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття козацького роду. То, що тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття козацького роду. Thank you, and please be seated. Look what we have here. We have a Ukrainian community as diverse as the country we live in, where culture and religion should not divide, but instead should bring us together as Canadians. We have representatives here from the various Ukrainian churches. We have representatives here from the various Ukrainian organizations that have been around for many, many, many decades, serving a purpose to help Ukrainian Canadians foster a future for generations to come. When we come together like this, it unites us for a common cause. We stick together, we help each other out. I'm a proud Canadian, born and raised. And despite the horrors that are ongoing in Ukraine right now, the suffering that's being endured by the Ukrainian people today, there's no place I'd rather be than right here in Canada. Because in Canada, we're free. We're free to express ourselves. That means we can read in Ukrainian, we can write in Ukrainian, we can speak Ukrainian, we can pray in Ukrainian, we can celebrate our rich Ukrainian culture. We're free. And we can only do that if we stick together. This is an example of unity. Everyone gathering here today like we are. Glory to Canada, glory to Ukraine, and glory to its heroes. Slava Ukraini! I would like to invite MP Chad Collins to formally introduce our Prime Minister.
And thank you, Constantine, for the heartfelt statement that you provided and the leadership that you and your community are providing, not just here in the Hamilton area, but the Greater Toronto area as well, and across the country. Organizations like yours and people like you are showing great leadership in a very difficult time. I want to thank, first and foremost, obviously, thank the Prime Minister for being here today. And I also want to recognize other representatives that are in attendance right now. Minister Philomena Tassi is here with us. Philomena, please, thank you. Minister Karina Gould is here from the Burlington area. Karina, there you go, thank you. My friend and colleague from Hamilton Mountain, Lisa Hefner, is here as well. Lisa, thank you. And Mayor Eisenberger is here as well. And so very important that the mayor is here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so it was just, it's been a whirlwind of activity over the last 48 hours, as you know, Mr. Prime Minister. And so the Prime Minister advised that he was going to be here in Hamilton. And he made it quite clear that he wanted to meet with Ukrainian representatives here who are doing tremendous work. And I said, well, in consultation with Minister Tassi, Minister Gould, and MP Hefner, we said, well, we know the people that you need to meet. And so I thank everyone who's here today in terms of sharing your time with us, sharing your time with the Prime Minister. It has been more than a difficult last 2 months, and so we've all watched the horrors on TV in terms of what's happening there, and you and your community, Constantine, and there are many groups here that are represented who are marshalling the forces here in the greater Hamilton area to provide supplies, to provide medical supplies, all kinds of relief efforts, not just to send back to Ukraine, but to help displaced Ukrainians who are making their way here to the Hamilton area. And so I had the opportunity, and I shared this with the Prime Minister in his office and my colleagues, that I had the opportunity to meet with your group, Constantine, just over a week ago. And we had a very special visitor. Sandy is here, and she is recently from Kyiv. And Sandy had an incredible story to tell us in terms of the journey that she made through Europe and then through here to Canada. And she was very direct and candid about some of the challenges that she experienced when she landed in Montreal Airport. And so I have taken that back with my colleagues in terms of Sandy's suggestion that we have somebody there at our international airports to greet people, which has been implemented thanks to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Transport. Sandy, you shared with us your concern in terms of accommodation for people who are making their way here, not just to Hamilton, but to other parts of Canada, and we are working on a settlement plan for that. Thank you so much. But the group also shared that there are other services that are needed. There are mental health services that are needed for people who will come here who have experienced the horrors of war. We know that there are child care services that are needed, translation services, transportation services. And so your group in that one meeting was very instrumental in passing that message along through me and my colleagues to the Prime Minister and other ministers who are responsible for providing those services. And I can say that Mayor Eisenberger has taken a strong leadership role here locally. He has pulled together an advisory committee with, I know, many of you who are in the audience, as well as settlement services organizations. And he is preparing a plan so that when Ukrainians like Sandy and families like Sandy's arrive here, that we are prepared not just to welcome them, but to provide them the services that they require and that they need. And so, Mr. Prime Minister, that is the context in terms of what we've discussed prior to your arrival here. I know these are not new issues for you, and so I thank you again for visiting Hamilton East, for the City of Hamilton, and welcome.
Thank you, Chad, for your words. Thank you, Constantine, for your welcome. But mostly, thank you. Thank all of you, not just for gathering today, but for having been there over the past many, many difficult weeks and months for your community, but for your community on the other side of the world as well. What is happening in Ukraine right now is absolutely atrocious. There was a deliberate decision by Vladimir Putin to invade a free, sovereign, independent Ukraine and to commit atrocities. The horror is going on. We'll just pause for the little man right now. Everyone wants a moment on stage. There we go. What is being faced by Ukrainians in Ukraine right now should never have happened. And what you are facing as community, not just, as Chad pointed out, watching it on TV or social media, but hearing it from loved ones, from friends, from families, from relatives over in Ukraine, is something that we as Canadians must all stand together against. Stand together because Ukrainians are an integral part of Canada. The Ukrainian-Canadian community has been in this country for well over 100 years and has helped build this country in so many ways and continues every single day to contribute in extraordinary ways to Canada's strength, to Canada's present, to Canada's future. But in doing so, even those very first immigrants who came here 100, 130 years ago to settle the prairies, to build our great cities, to build strong communities, knew, even 130 years ago, that part of the responsibility of the Ukrainian-Canadian community would be to continue to stand strong for Ukrainian culture, language, identity, past and future. Ukrainians all know that the story of the 20th century was a difficult one. From the Holodomor to World War II to this Russian invasion to the Soviet-era occupation. Ukrainians have demonstrated every step of the way their courage, their incredible sense of self, their love of family, their commitment to their culture, to their identity, to their language. And Canada hasn't just been a place where you've been able to celebrate, continue those traditions, language, and cultures. Canada is a place that you helped build and shape with that understanding that there is no contradiction between being a proud Ukrainian and a proud Canadian. That we are a country that gets to layer on identities as each of us choose. That the language, the culture, the history that you bring and that your ancestors brought to this country enriches us and deepens us greatly. We talk a lot about multiculturalism still these days. I think many Canadians, nobody in this room, but many Canadians would be surprised to know that the speech that launched multiculturalism in this country by the Prime Minister in 1970, happened to be my father, was given at the Ukrainian Congress in 1970 in Winnipeg. The idea of multiculturalism is as old as Canada itself. And it says you don't have to choose. It says when you come to this country, you bring with you your identity, your history, your strengths, and we build a future based on respect, based on hard work, based on being there for each other. And that has benefited Canada greatly and has shaped Canada. But that's why, for all the family connections, for all the historical links between Canada and Ukraine, the current friendship between our two countries, the number one reason Canadians and Canada should care and do care deeply about what's happening in Ukraine right now is not because Ukrainians are our friends or Ukraine is a friend to Canada, although that's part of it. But the main reason is your fight is our fight. Ukrainians are fighting for the values that underpin democracy, that underpin a free and open world, a world where people get to choose their language, choose how they are governed, choose the direction for their country. That is what is at stake with Vladimir Putin's colonialism, his disrespect, his disregard for the choice of Ukrainians to be proud Ukrainians. So when Canadians and friends from around the world stand for Ukraine, we are standing for Ukraine. But we are also standing for ourselves, for these values that have been undermined over the past years with the rise of authoritarianism, with attacks on the social cohesion because of excessive populism and over-nationalism. We have an opportunity now as a world to stand for what is right. And that is why Canada stands with Ukraine, why we are sending so much aid, why the room filled with boxes that Constantine showed me downstairs, the generosity of all Canadians in supporting Ukraine is so important. But let us be honest. The world stands with Ukraine, but Ukraine fights alone. Ukrainians are fighting and dying for our values as well as their language, their culture, their future. And we need to do, and we are doing, everything we can to support them in this fight, to stand with them, to push back against Vladimir Putin, not only to make sure that Vladimir Putin loses this war, but to make sure that nowhere else in the world people can think that it's okay to invade, to take anyone else's sovereignty, to choose to seek to eradicate a people, a culture, a language, a future. Canada has been there with humanitarian aid, with military aid, with significant financial aid, and we will continue to be there. But there is much more to do. We've seen just how brutal and horrific these past 2 months have been. And as a world, we need to continue to stand with Ukraine. We need to continue to be there, imposing these crushing sanctions on Russia, continue to empower Ukrainian heroes to stand strong against the Russian invaders, and make sure that never again will any leader think it's a good idea to invade their neighbors. This is a moment for us to stand as a world, but mostly it's a moment for us to all stand with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini! Heroyam Slava! Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. I want to come around and say everyone, so I'm going to cut off my speech here. And merci beaucoup d'être ici aujourd'hui.